My name is Sarah, and I'm 27 years old. Classic cars have been my obsession since I was a little girl. I worked brutal 80-hour weeks for 4 years straight to finally afford my dream car, a pristine 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback in candy apple red. Never in my wildest nightmares did I imagine returning from my month-long business trip to find my prized possession gone. When I asked where my car was, my mother actually smirked and said, "Thanks to your car, Jessica is having the time of her life in Europe." I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. She snapped back, "What's so funny about your sister's happiness?" Let me explain how we got here. My passion for classic cars began when I was 8 years old. Every weekend, my grandfather would take me to classic car shows around town. While other kids were playing video games, I was learning about engines, transmissions, and restoration techniques. My grandfather owned a beautiful 1967 Mustang Fastback, the exact car that would later become my obsession. Cars aren't just machines, Sarah, he would tell me. They're pieces of history, works of art. When he passed away when I was 16, he left me his tools and a promise to myself that someday I would own a Mustang just like his. My parents, Richard and Linda, never understood my unfeminine interests. My younger sister, Jessica, 3 years my junior, was everything I wasn't in their eyes: delicate, traditionally feminine, and interested in fashion and social media. When Jessica wanted dance lessons, they immediately enrolled her in the most expensive studio. When I asked for auto shop classes, they said we couldn't afford extracurriculars. This pattern continued throughout our lives. Jessica got a sweet 16 party with 100 guests. I got a cake from the grocery store. Jessica got a brand new Honda Civic for graduation. I got a lecture about student loans and responsibility. After high school, I moved across the country for college, determined to forge my own path. I worked 3 jobs while maintaining a perfect GPA in finance. After graduation, I landed a position at a top investment firm in San Francisco. The hours were crushing. 80-hour weeks were normal, but the salary was worth it. I lived spartanly, sharing a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and surviving on ramen noodles. Every extra dollar went into my savings account, earmarked for one specific purpose: my dream Mustang. While my colleagues splurged on designer clothes and exotic vacations, I kept my eye on the prize. 4 years of grinding work later, I finally had enough. I found her on a classic car auction site, a 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback in perfect candy apple red, exactly like my grandfather's. The seller was a collector in Nevada who was downsizing. The price, $75,000. Every penny I had saved. The day I drove that car home was the most emotional of my life. I could feel my grandfather's presence beside me as I cruised down Highway 1. The car represented more than just a purchase. It was proof of my independence, my dedication, and my connection to the man who believed in me when no one else did. My boyfriend Marcus understood this completely. We'd met at a classic car show 6 months after I bought the Mustang. He owned a restored 1968 Camaro and shared my passion for automotive history. Unlike my family, Marcus respected the sentimental value of my car and never questioned my priorities. For 2 years, that Mustang was my pride and joy. I babied it, drove it only on perfect days, and stored it properly during San Francisco's rainy seasons. I never imagined the greatest threat to my beloved car would come from my own family. The call came on a Thursday morning. My boss, Margaret, summoned me to her office immediately. As I walked down the hall, my mind raced through possibilities, most of them negative. "Sarah," Margaret said as I entered, "how's your German?" I blinked, surprised. "Conversational. I studied it for 3 years in college." She nodded. "Perfect. I need you in Berlin. Hoffman Industries wants to expand their American investments, and they specifically requested someone who understands both cultures. This is huge for us." My heart raced. Hoffman Industries was a potential client worth tens of millions. Landing them would mean bonuses, promotions, and serious career advancement. "It's a month-long assignment," Margaret continued. "You leave Monday. My assistant will email you the details." A month away from home was longer than I'd ever been gone. While thrilled about the opportunity, my mind immediately went to my Mustang. My neighborhood had experienced several car break-ins recently, and leaving my baby unattended for that long terrified me. After considering options, I decided the safest place would be my parents' suburban garage in Sacramento. They had a secure garage, a quiet neighborhood, and despite our complicated relationship, I trusted them to provide safe storage. That weekend, I drove the 3 hours to my parents' house. Dad was washing his truck when I pulled up, and he stopped to admire the Mustang. Still a beauty, he said, running his hand along the hood. Your grandfather would be proud. Mom appeared at the front door. Sarah, what a surprise. Are you staying for dinner? I explained about the Berlin assignment and my request to store the car. Of course, Dad said immediately. We have plenty of room. As we moved the Mustang into the garage, I gave detailed instructions. It needs to be started once a week and run for 10 minutes, but please don't drive it. The insurance is complicated. Also, use this specific cover. I showed him the custom car cover I'd brought. And whatever you do, don't let anyone else touch it. Sarah, I know how to care for a car, Dad said, slightly offended. I'll treat it like it's made of gold. That evening at dinner, Jessica joined us. She'd recently graduated college and was working as a social media coordinator, her first real job. Throughout dinner, she complained about how stressful work was and how desperately she needed a vacation. All my friends are doing this amazing European backpacking trip, she sighed dramatically. But I just can't afford it on my salary. It's so unfair. I bit my tongue, remembering my own college years working multiple jobs. Mom predictably made sympathetic noises and suggested Dad might help with the cost. Money's tight with the kitchen renovation, Dad said diplomatically. Before leaving, I called Marcus to confirm our security plan. We'd discussed having him check on the car periodically, but his work schedule made regular trips to Sacramento difficult. I'll drive up there in 2 weeks to make sure everything's okay, he promised. The next morning, I boarded my flight to Berlin, confident my car was safe. Little did I know that my careful planning would set in motion events that would forever change my family dynamics. The Berlin assignment was incredibly demanding but successful. I was working 18-hour days, navigating complex international negotiations. During my few free moments, I called home regularly. My parents always assured me everything was fine, though in the final week, Mom's messages became oddly cryptic. We have a big surprise waiting for you, she texted, which I assumed meant a welcome home dinner. The Hoffman Industries presentation was a resounding success. By the third week, they'd signed a contract worth $20 million to our firm. At the celebration dinner, Margaret hinted strongly about a promotion waiting for me. Senior Vice President has a nice ring to it, she said with a knowing smile. I boarded my return flight feeling on top of the world, eager to get home, take my Mustang for a drive, and share my success with Marcus and my family. My plane landed at SFO on a sunny Friday afternoon. Instead of going to my apartment, I decided to surprise my parents and pick up my car directly. I took a rideshare to Sacramento, texting Marcus that I'd meet him at my parents' house. As we turned onto my parents' street, I felt excitement building. The driver pulled into the driveway, and immediately I frowned. The garage door was open, showing Dad's truck and Mom's SUV, but no Mustang. Maybe they moved it to make room, I muttered, paying the driver. Mom opened the door before I could knock, greeting me with an overly enthusiastic hug. Welcome home, sweetheart. How was your flight? Fine, I said distractedly. Mom, where's my car? A strange expression crossed her face, defensive and guilty simultaneously. She ushered me inside without answering. Dad was in his recliner, and he looked up when I entered, his smile not reaching his eyes. Dad, where's my Mustang? I asked directly, dread building in my stomach. He cleared his throat nervously. Well, honey, something came up while you were gone. The knot in my stomach tightened. What do you mean? Where's my car? Mom turned, lifting her chin in that way she always did when preparing to defend the indefensible. Jessica needed help, she said firmly. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I stared at her, not comprehending. What does that have to do with my car? Thanks to your car, our daughter is having the time of her life, Mom said with a smile that looked more like a sneer. She pulled out her phone, showing me Jessica's Instagram feed. There was my sister posing at the Eiffel Tower, then in front of the Colosseum, designer luggage beside her, living her best life across Europe without a care in the world. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. You sold my car. The words came out as a whisper, too shocked to shout. Now Sarah, Dad began placatingly, try to understand. Jessica was going through a really rough time at work. All her friends were going on this trip, and she was going to be left out. It would have devastated her. So you sold my car? This time I did shout, my voice cracking with disbelief. You can always buy another car, Mom said dismissively. You make good money. Jessica needed this opportunity for her mental health and career networking. I felt like I was in a nightmare. My hands shook as the full impact hit me. That car was registered in my name. You had no legal right to sell it. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. Well, technically, Dad mumbled. We told the buyer you were selling it and had authorized us to handle the transaction. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my temples. Do you have any idea what that car meant to me? It wasn't just transportation. It was my connection to Grandpa, the result of 4 years of sacrifice. It's just a car, Sarah, Mom said, her tone hardening. Family matters more. Jessica is your sister. She needed this. And I don't matter? My feelings, my property, my boundaries, none of that counts? Don't be so dramatic, Mom scoffed. You've always been materialistic. Jessica has been struggling with depression. Depression? I echoed incredulously. Since when? She's been stressed at work, Dad offered weakly. I laughed bitterly. Welcome to adult life. I worked 80-hour weeks for years to afford that car. Did you ever once consider selling your possessions to make my life easier? That's different, Mom said defensively. You've always been the strong one. Jessica needs more support. The double standard was breathtaking. For a moment, I stood there trembling with rage and disbelief. Then a thought occurred to me. How much did you sell it for? More uncomfortable glances. Finally, Dad answered. 40,000. I gasped. 40,000? That car was worth 75,000. Did you do any research? The buyer said that was fair market value, Dad muttered. Who did you sell it to? Some collector from Arizona, Mom said vaguely. I don't remember his name. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Just arrived. Where's the Mustang? Suddenly, a realization dawned on me that would change everything. I started laughing softly at first, then louder. The sound was strange even to my ears, a mixture of hysteria and relief. Mom's face contorted with annoyance. What's so funny about your sister's happiness? I held up my phone, showing Marcus's text. You want to know what's funny? You stole and sold a car that wasn't mine. Dad frowned. What are you talking about? We saw you drive it here. Just then, the front door opened and Marcus walked in looking confused. Behind him was my actual 1967 Mustang Fastback, gleaming in the afternoon sun. The color drained from my parents' faces as I explained our security arrangement. The week before I left for Berlin, Marcus and I had decided to swap cars as an extra precaution. He'd driven up the day after I left and switched his 1968 Camaro for my Mustang, taking it to his secure garage in the city. So you see, I concluded, you didn't sell my car. My car has been safely stored in Marcus's climate-controlled garage for the past month. What you sold was Marcus's Camaro without his knowledge or consent, but it looked exactly like yours, Dad stammered. That's because they're both classic American muscle cars, Marcus said, speaking for the first time. But mine is a 1968 Camaro, not a 1967 Mustang, and it's worth about 30,000, not 75. Oh my God, Mom whispered, sinking into a chair. What have we done? You've committed theft, I said flatly. You sold property that belonged to Marcus. You forged documents and lied to a buyer. We could go to jail, Dad said, his face ashen. Yes, Marcus agreed, his voice hard. Grand theft auto is a felony in California. Add wire fraud if you received electronic payment. Mom began crying loud, dramatic sobs. How were we supposed to know it wasn't your car? You tricked us. I didn't trick you, I corrected. I made a smart decision to protect my property, and clearly, I was right not to trust you. My phone rang, an unknown Arizona number. Is this Sarah Mitchell? A male voice asked. Yes, this is David Chen. I recently purchased a 1968 Camaro from your parents. There seems to be an issue with the title transfer. I locked eyes with my parents, who watched with naked fear. In that moment, I had a choice. I could throw them under the bus immediately, or buy time to find a solution. Mr. Chen, I said carefully, there has been a misunderstanding. Could I call you back within the hour? He agreed, and I hung up. That was your buyer, I told them. He's having title transfer problems because the car belongs to Marcus, not me. So now we need to decide how to fix this. Please, Sarah, Mom begged. Please help us. We never meant to hurt anyone, except me, I pointed out. You were perfectly fine hurting me. Over the next hour, Marcus and I laid out the situation. My parents had not only stolen his car but had also created fraudulent documents with forged signatures and incorrect vehicle identification numbers. This is a complete disaster, Marcus said, reviewing the paperwork. They've committed multiple felonies. We presented them with our terms, full restitution of $45,000 to cover the car's value plus damages, a formal written apology acknowledging their crimes, and immediate family therapy to address the boundary violations that had led to this situation. $45,000, Mom repeated, aghast. Where are we supposed to get that? That's not my problem, I said coldly. You created this situation. It took a week of frantic negotiations, but eventually, they found a solution. They took out a home equity loan for $35,000. Jessica contributed $5,000 from her Europe fund, cutting her trip short, and they sold Mom's jewelry collection for the remaining $5,000. The hardest part was the family meeting where Jessica, forced to return early from her European adventure, finally faced the consequences of her entitled behavior. Why am I being punished? She demanded. I didn't sell the car. No, you just manipulated Mom and Dad into funding a vacation you couldn't afford, I replied. You're 24, Jessica. It's time to grow up. That's not fair. You've always been jealous because they love me more. The room fell silent. Even our parents looked shocked. Is that what you think? I asked quietly. That they love you more? They've always given me more, she said, her voice smaller now. And look how that turned out, I said, not unkindly. You can't support yourself. You manipulate them whenever life gets difficult. That's not love, Jessica. That's enabling. Dad, for the first time, seemed to truly understand. Vanessa's right, he said slowly. We haven't done you any favors, Jessica. We thought we were protecting you, but we've just kept you from learning independence. The conversation that followed was the most honest our family had ever had. There were tears, anger, and painful admissions, but something fundamental shifted in our dynamics. Within 2 weeks, Mr. Chen had been contacted and the situation explained. Marcus got his Camaro back, along with full compensation. My parents completed their loan paperwork and signed a notarized agreement promising to respect boundaries in the future. The most significant change was in Jessica, forced to confront her entitlement and contribute financially to fixing the mess she'd helped create. She began to mature rapidly. She took a second job to rebuild her savings and started therapy to address her dependency issues. A month later, I found myself at my parents' house for dinner, our first family meal since the incident. The atmosphere was different, marked by mutual respect, rather than the old patterns of favoritism and boundary violations. I've been thinking about getting back into classic cars, Dad mentioned as we ate. Maybe you could teach me about restoration? The offer touched me deeply. It wasn't just about cars, it was Dad making an effort to connect with me on my terms. I'd like that, I said sincerely. As Marcus and I drove home in my Mustang that evening. The familiar rumble of the engine was comforting. The car had taken on new meaning. It was still my connection to my grandfather and proof of my hard work, but it had also become a catalyst for necessary change in my family. Do you regret how we handled it? Marcus asked. I shook my head. Not at all. It would have been easier to let them off the hook, but that would have just reinforced the same unhealthy patterns. They needed real consequences. The next morning, I took the Mustang for a long drive along the coast, something I'd done countless times before. But today felt different. As the wind rushed through my hair and the sun glinted off the car's polished hood, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. The most valuable lesson from this ordeal was learning that standing up for yourself doesn't mean abandoning those you love. It means loving them enough to establish boundaries that allow for mutual respect and growth. 6 months later, our family relationships had fundamentally transformed. Jessica had been promoted at work and was saving for her own car. My parents were attending therapy and learning to treat their daughters equally. Dad and I had started working on a restoration project together, Uncle George's old pickup truck. The road ahead wouldn't be perfectly smooth, but for the first time in my adult life, I felt hopeful about our family's future. My Mustang was still just a car, but what it represented had evolved. Now it symbolized not just my past and my sacrifices, but my commitment to my own worth and my refusal to be diminished, even by those who claimed to love me. Sometimes the things we value most become tests of character, revealing truths that are hard to face but necessary to confront. My dream car had taught my family that love without respect is worthless, and that real support means holding people accountable for their growth, not enabling their worst impulses. As I parked the Mustang in my garage that evening, I smiled at my grandfather's old tools hanging on the wall. "We did it, Grandpa," I whispered. "We taught them that boundaries matter, and that family means respecting each other, not just demanding loyalty." The car purred softly as the engine cooled, and I knew that both it and my family were exactly where they belonged.